You know what? I have some facts about schools.
Schools.
Yes.
Well, that's good. We're going to talk about schools with our guest today.
Oh, right on.
That's perfect.
Right on.
What do you got?
All right. For example, the oldest school is in China, and it's called Shishi.
Shishi?
Two pronouns. She.
He, she?
No, she. Shishi. It was established in 194 A.D.
Wow.
Yeah.
Those are some old kids.
The first Chinese public school to ever exist, and it was modernized in 1902. And then today they have up-to-date quality equipment and supplies, etc.
So they updated again.
True, but they first updated not until 1902, from 194. That's pretty cool.
Wow. Wait a minute. What? How long between?
Like 1,700 years.
Oh my gosh!
Using the same chalkboard. Can you imagine? Oh, that'd be some.
Those erasers must have been in sad repair.
Yeah.
What else you got?
Did you have chalkboard duty when you were in school?
Yeah, I loved it.
So
we had that little machine in the janitor's closet that, you turn it on and it sucks and makes all this noise and has this little vibrating thing on there. Made lots of dust, and
wow,
it was awesome.
You really know what you're talking about.
I do.
Did you know there's a school in the Philippines that is made entirely of pop bottles?
What do you mean?
Picture.
Oh, that's the picture you showed me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll put that up.
All right.
Okay.
It's called the Bottle School, and it is made up of 9,000 bottles.
Look at that.
Each one filled with sand, water, and straw, and then cement to hold them in place.
Where's this?
Philippines.
Oh, shoot. I hit the mouse accidentally. No, let's go on.
Okay, go on. There's a Montessori school in India. It's called the City Montessori School, and it was in the 2019 Guinness World Book of Records as being the largest number of pupils. Can you guess how many pupils in one school?
In one school.
India, remember?
India. A lot of people in India. In our class, in our graduating class, we had 400, I think it was 65.
I had 65.
And that was in 1980. Yes, I'm that old. India. India's much more populated.
Yes, and these students attended on a daily basis.
And this is in the whole school.
Yep, number of pupils.
The whole school.
Yep.
7,500.
56,000.
No, not the school, not the town.
You
said school.
One school, 56,000 kids.
In the school.
In the school. And guess what? They've got 18 of these types of campuses in India. And
18 schools of 56,000 people.
Yep.
Students.
And there's a staff of 4,500 alone, just the staff. Wow. So that being said, that was the largest school, right? With the most populated children. The smallest was in Turin, Italy in 2014. One school had one teacher and one student. They decided to leave it open because there was at least one student. And this poor little guy, he did admit to being lonely, and he then tried to imagine other students in the classroom with him.
Wow.
I know, right? So yeah, did you know that mealtime in French schools, is actually part of the curriculum? They have to learn about school or learn about food.
I'm moving to France.
Learn at wine. They let them drink wine. Yeah.
At what age?
It just says mealtime. It's. I think it's all schools. They let them drink right from the beginning. Wine, because that's part of their culture.
See, that wouldn't work here.
No, I know. But they have to learn about different foods, where they came from, and then they also display good manners and etiquette as well as learning about the food and drink. Pretty cool.
That is cool.
Yeah. In Bangladesh, there are boat schools. There's 100 boat schools, actually, because of the annual flooding. The water rises over 12 feet. But they do have internet, library, solar powered, all that. It's really kind of interesting. So,
where is that? Bangladesh?
Bangladesh, yeah. They make their way.
I didn't know they had so much rain.
I didn't either. Those are
Both
my
schools. Wow.
school
Well, thank you
facts.
for that education.
You're welcome.
That's pretty
Thank
cool
you.
stuff. We're going to move on after this brief announcement from our sponsor, America Rising Coffee. Get a load of this label. Awake, not woke. What else does it say? Enjoy the smooth taste of liberty. We'll be back in a second.
Don't stop. We're rising up, not gonna stop, stop. We'll hit the ground, and the that's moving. Won't stop the flow, like the blood in our veins.
So the question on everyone's mind, what do you do? What do we do when we see things in our schools that aren't what we would consider appropriate or even a learning experience for the student? Well, we've got a guest today who can tell us a little bit about what she's been doing and the results that she's seen. I've got some notes here because she's, well, I'll just read it to you. Um, she's with the National Moms for Liberty organization, and I'll let her tell you what that's all about. Um, she's just active in her local chapter and as a legislative liaison on the North Carolina statewide legislative committee. And her name, Britney Bouldin. Britney, welcome. Good to see you here.
Hi, thank you. Glad to be here.
So, what is this organization you're a big part of? What's that all about? What is it? What do you do?
So, Moms for Liberty, we fight to protect parental rights in education at all levels of government.
And that's nationwide.
Yes, it is. We have chapters in 48 states.
Wow.
We are soon hoping to get to 50.
What are the last two states?
If I'm correct, I want
Put
to
you on
say
the
it's,
spot here.
yeah, I know. I know Vermont is one. I'm not sure the second one. I want to say Connecticut maybe, but I'm not. Don't quote me on that one.
Okay. So we have one in Montana, you think?
Yes, you do have one in Montana.
Awesome. That's good because
I
it's,
think it's in.
where I
I
am.
think it's the county where Bozeman is.
Oh, okay. Well, that's where I am.
Okay.
Woohoo.
Yes, I think so.
Good. Well, we'll check it out and maybe we'll get someone from our local area to come on and tell us what they're doing here locally and
Yes,
how
I can
people can get
definitely, and
involved.
I can hook you up with whoever is the chapter chair in Montana in that
Okay.
area. We're organized by counties, so it gets a little tricky because most people, when you talk to people all over the country and most people use cities as a point of reference. People rarely use counties as a point of reference unless you're talking
Right.
about election integrity and things like that. And then you may remember hearing a county, like everyone knows Miami-Dade, right? And now we all know Maricopa. But given that most school districts are broken up kind of into counties, that made the most sense for how to organize.
Okay. That makes perfect sense. So
Yep.
tell me
But it makes
what
it a little bit hard. It makes it a little bit hard to figure out because people will say, well, I'm in Bozeman, Montana, and I'm like, okay, what's the county for that? So it makes it hard to kind of process
yeah.
sometimes.
No, I get it. You're right. Unless you're right there, it's hard to
Yes.
know. Yeah.
Yes.
So let's delve in a little bit to what's going on in your life and
Okay.
I'll just leave it to you. I'll ask some questions as we go along, hopefully.
Okay. I really, honestly, I was never really politically involved. I've always enjoyed talking about issues. I'm definitely a more of a deep issues type person than a just gossipy talk about people person. So if you're gonna have a conversation with me, I'll probably take it to issues pretty quickly. But I really didn't care about politics. I didn't understand the level that politics really affects us. And I only really cared about the presidential election to be completely honest. That was the only thing that ever really registered on my radar. And I can remember having friends that were very involved in the political process who would say local elections matter. And I used to just roll my eyes at them and just say, whatever. No, they don't. Like, who cares? Who cares? I literally was like, who cares about local elections? And then 2020 hit and COVID hit. And I think the entire country, including myself, and maybe even the world, actually, based on how other countries do their election systems. But I think definitely the entire country got a very, uh, a very quick lesson on why local elections matter. We all kind of got a quick civics lesson of, oh, this is why they matter, which really connects us to why the founders created our government the way it did, right? They had a better understanding at their time of why local elections matter. And somewhere we've lost that. And I
Yeah,
was
I
a
think
victim.
we were told in school from a young age that well, the focus was on the federal elections.
Absolutely. And you could even look at media. I mean, yeah, media is, I think when we look at the decline of our country, I think we always have to look at the messaging. So we have education, right? Messaging coming from education, but I think messaging also coming from media. That's where, you don't really see a whole lot of debates for school board televised, right?
Okay.
But you do see them for the presidential election, and it gets all the hype and it gets all the money. And, um, you know, so therefore everyone's eyes go to what's being highlighted the most, which really and truly, if we're wanting to preserve the liberty and the freedom of our country, we should be televising school board election debates. We should be
Well, it's
having
hard
those
to
debates.
know even who's running and
Right,
what
right,
what their take on all the issues is.
correct. Because that's who's educating the next generation, right?
Right.
And that's basically going to be the future of our country. So yeah, so 2020 happened, and I was still asleep at the beginning of 2020. I mean, I was very scared of COVID. I masked, I gloved, I sanitized, I triaged my groceries and had like a whole system of sterilizing them. I sterilized my mail to the point where I had to like set it out in the sun to dry so I could actually read it because it was so
Wow.
soggy. Um, I took it very seriously for a very long time, until my husband got on Twitter and he started following some things, and he said, I'm not sure if this is exactly what we think it is. And I'd had a Twitter account, gosh, since the inception of Twitter. I just never really used it. And so I fired that sucker back up and started looking myself. And I'm the kind of personality that if I feel like I'm being lied to, um, I'm like a dog with a bone. I will dig and dig and dig and dig until I can find truth. And what I found when I started digging was that COVID wasn't the only thing that I had been lied to about. Really, I've been lied to. Uh, I've been lied to my entire life about a lot of things. I mean, even through education. And if we really want to look at the lies, I mean, there's two types of lies, right? There's a blatant, like, I am going to tell you something that's false. But then there's lie of omission. And when there's lie of omission, I think it matters. Okay, if you just accidentally omit something, that's one thing. But lie of omission because you have a nefarious agenda that you don't want people, you're purposefully hiding information from people. That's pretty big. And I think that, that's happened a lot in our country. I think that, a lot of the, how things can be declared confidential. I think there's been a lot of use in that of making sure the American people don't have transparency. Basically, I came to the realization after all of my digging, I came to the realization is that American people have been robbed, and they've been robbed because we've gotten zero transparency and we've had zero accountability.
Well, and I think
Um,
that's why so many young people getting out of high school, especially, are so angry, so
Yes.
frustrated, so confused. They're starting to realize that what they've been taught in school and all through their young life, well, that's not necessarily the case.
Correct.
We're finding out a
Correct.
whole new world here, and we're not ready for it.
Correct. And not just back to the lies thing, not just what we've been taught in school isn't the case. It's what have I not been taught in school?
Right.
Right? What have they left out? And not even for nefarious reasons, but just, prioritizing the wrong things, which we see in school right now. Currently, we have children that cannot read. Okay,
Right.
3 out of 4 children are not at grade level, and yet um, we're prioritizing social and emotional learning. Well, you know what can help children to be more confident and have better emotional stability is the ability to learn and succeed, right? The ability to read and succeed. If you
Yep.
have someone who's successful in life and in school, then they're going to have better emotion, right? They're going to have better ability to regulate their emotions, and they're going to feel better about themselves. They're not going to be as depressed. Um, Frederick Douglass, and people typically quote him, but I truly believe reading is equity. They keep saying they want equity. Well, you know what the best equity would be is to make sure that every single child could read. That needs to be number one, first and foremost, above
And it used to
anything
be.
else. It did. It did.
We
Which
used
is
to
why Frederick
we
Douglass
used to
fought
be
so hard.
top of the line,
Yes.
top of the charts
Hmm.
worldwide in reading,
Yes.
arithmetic, science,
Yes.
the whole ball of wax. Now where
Yes.
are we? We're close to
Yes.
the bottom. Well,
Correct.
that's got to change. And
Correct.
your organization and you yourself, you're stepping up to facilitate that change.
Correct. So, how I kind of got into this was as I started deep diving and learning all the lies of omission, the things that we hadn't been taught. It really basically came down to part of the problem of our country is we have low information populace and citizenry. And that is largely because of the decline of schools. And I started realizing that we had to fix it from the bottom. Like we can no longer um, letting our children graduate from schools and not understand the country and the founding that they came from. If we're going to save America, we have to do that, because I think a lot of people right now who are misled and misguided, it's because they've been taught to hate their country. They've been taught that it's not a good country. They've been taught a bunch of things that aren't true. And so we need to really get back to the founding and the truth. But also, we need to get schools back to doing what they were made and what they were designed to do, right?
Right.
Schools are supposed to educate, they're not supposed to indoctrinate.
That's right. So how did you get involved? What happened in your life or in your children's lives that got you up off the sofa, so to
Right.
speak, and on your feet?
So 2020 election happened, and to be honest, I early 2020 I was not going to vote for Trump. I actually thought Andrew Cuomo should run for office because I was watching all of his COVID pressers that he was doing on a daily basis. And I remember telling my husband, this guy should run for president. He's great. So this just shows you the degree of change in me, right? So I did vote for Trump in 2016, but it was more of a vote against Hillary. I'm from Arkansas, and I know way too much about that family that I was
Right.
never going to put her in office. Um, but Trump, he was. I don't like his style. I have plenty of criticism about him. That said, he does say things sometimes that I'm like, most everybody's thinking this. He's just the only one that has the guts to say it.
Right.
Um,
And the media turns that around. Oh, you're just a Trump. What did they used to say? Trump repeater. I forget the
yeah.
term, but
So it's interesting to me on both sides. You can't say anything nice about Trump or positive about Trump without people immediately saying, "Oh, you're a Trumper," or "You're for Trump," or
right.
or you're MAGA. And I'm like, well, no, because I have criticism of him as well. I would do things much differently than he did as far as style.
Yep.
But that doesn't change the fact that his policies were good. So 2020 came along, and originally I wasn't going to vote for Trump. I was Andrew Cuomo. Then I woke up and I went down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out what all I'd been lied to, and I realized that a lot of things that I believed about Trump were lies. And so then I started looking into his policy, and I started realizing that actually his policies were very good. And so I voted for him. He lost the election, and I was like, I don't know what to do, because I could see that we were losing our country. And I knew that Biden was going to be terrible for our country. And unfortunately, I was correct. So early 2021, I was just like, I've got to do something. So I thought about starting an organization, because I wanted to get more. I wanted to solve the problem of low information voters. And because I would talk to people and they would say, well, Trump's so horrible, he's awful, say all these bad things. And I would ask them, well, give me an example of that. And they would be able to repeat is the lies that I had found out that the media had been telling everyone, propagandizing everyone with. And so I finally would go through his policies. I said, okay, let me ask you this. And I would go through all of his policies and ask people where they stood on those policies, basically taking people through the process that I had just taken myself through. And we would get to the end, and I would say, the question I have for you is, why aren't you voting for Trump? Because you agree with all of his policies. And
Yes, but he has mean tweets.
Well, they couldn't ever argue that. All they could say was, but he's horrible. And so that whole process made me really concerned about this low information voters and the propaganda that was coming out of the mainstream media. And so I was going to start my own organization to help with that. And then I ran across Moms for Liberty. And when I saw them and I looked at what they were doing, I thought, well, we're really late to what I think. I mean, I believe that we're in a war, and not like one we've ever seen before. Information, right? Information and cultural war.
Yeah, you're right.
And I said, and we're late. We're very late to this. We should have been fighting this decades ago. And I don't have time to create my own thing in the time that it would take to do that. This organization's already up and running. Why reinvent the wheel? Let's go. So I signed up, and I was approved in, I think, March, April of 2021. And we hit the ground running. And at that point in time, it became more of a, like a fire drill type thing, where I know I wanted to deal with low information voters. I knew that I was noticing things coming home from my kids' school. So I knew that we needed to address that. We had a book come home. My nephew got a book called, I can't remember what the exact name of it is, but it was about, America has a problem and white people are the reason, or something like that. And it was basically a whole book. It's called Not My Idea. And it was a whole book about how there's racism still in America, and white people are the reason. And there's like this illustration that depicts a white person as the devil, because it has like a little bit of a tail with a devil tail on it. And it was really appalling, to be honest. So I started noticing things like that, and I was like, we've got to do something. Like, I quickly pinpointed education is a lot of why we are where we are. And Moms for Liberty was perfect for that. But at the time, the fire drill at the time was COVID, and was the fact that we had children that were mandated to wear masks. They were mandated to quarantine. And the quarantine was like 10 days. Distance learning was taking a toll on my children. My youngest does not respond well to screens at all. He has major personality changes when he's in front of a screen too much. And he was really struggling emotionally with all that screen access. It just makes him, it causes him to be very angry and upset and very anxious. My other two were starting to be depressed. I had a middle schooler and two elementary kids at the time, and my middle schooler, she just was really struggling with the isolation of the distance learning. We finally got back in school, but we had masks, and I noticed that my son, he had a rash, and I noticed that so when you have a mask on, your instinct level tells you that there's something in front of where you breathe. And but as adults, we have the frontal lobe and the executive function to say, oh, there's no reason to worry, it's just a mask and I have control. But as kids, they don't have that executive function ability. So looking back on it, I wonder if he maybe was having panic attacks all day long because of the mask. I wonder if instinctually he was feeling like this fight or flight sensation because he knew something was in front of his face, because he would
Yeah, he
come home
wasn't
every
getting
day.
enough oxygen.
Yeah, he was coming home, and every day from school, he would either melt down into tears, I mean, in a puddle of
Hmm.
tears, and then just have a fit of rage, or he would just have a fit of rage. And it would last for about 15 minutes every day after school, and then he'd be okay. And then once
Wow.
we had masks gone, after they finally removed the mask, he never did that again when he came home from school. So he was a little bit older, so definitely that could play a part in it. I'm not trying to say, I'm a scientist and I've done like the experiment, like I've looked at all the factors, but I do find it very interesting. So they definitely had mask harm. So we felt like there needed to be an option, that parents needed to have the right to choose if their children's way of breathing and receiving oxygen was restricted. We didn't feel like that was something the state should be able to make the decision on. So we fought for mask optional policy. We fought for to get rid of the quarantine policy. I mean, it was known early on, in the spring or early summer of 2021, that kids were not a vector of spread,
Right.
and they were not really at risk of being really harmed by the virus. So, I mean, all my families had the virus now, and my children, they didn't even know they had it, which is the case in many kids. So, the policies were just so blanket and so, I mean, just so
Idiotic.
tyrannical. Yeah, chaotic, but just such tyranny with the
Yeah.
policies. Um, so, and then we did not want a mandating of the COVID vaccine. We wanted that to be optional as well, given that my argument for the COVID vaccine was that you can do all the studies you want, right? You can test it, you can do whatever you want, you can do the trials, but it was virtually impossible to get longitudinal evidence.
Yep.
You literally cannot get longitudinal data because we haven't had it for long enough. And I'm a speech therapist. I've worked in hospitals. I learned about statistics and things like that when I was in school, and so I know the importance of longitudinal data. And no one, all these people, all these doctors that wanted to argue with me, I'm like, well, tell me, how are you getting any longitudinal data? You can't argue that position. It is a new vaccine. There's a reason why up until this point we've gone through years of developing a vaccine, because they wanted that longitudinal data. And
Exactly.
you're gonna, there's no way. I mean, you just can't tell me. So I know I'm not doing it. So,
And we know it's not a vaccine. It doesn't stop anything. It doesn't
well,
it doesn't keep you
the
from getting
fact
it.
that
It
they,
doesn't
yeah,
keep you from giving it. It's not a vaccine. It's just a
it,
shot like the flu shot, but it's
correct,
worse.
correct. And that was the other thing, the propaganda that went with it was just so in your face and sickening. The changing of language, the
Yeah.
calling it a vaccine, the changing of what is considered to be a vaccine, like what the definition of that is, the changing of natural immunity definition. Those things really just were a red flag for me. And then when they started offering treats, like you get a Dunkin' Donut or a Krispy Kreme donut if you get a vaccine. I'm like, this just smacks of just not on the up and up.
Right.
Um, so yeah, so I wasn't going to, I was not going to be a guinea pig, and I for sure wasn't going to let my children be a guinea pig.
So you went up against the board, you and a group of moms.
Yeah, and luckily our board was like-minded, and they ended up going up
Wait a minute,
against the
they
state.
agreed with you?
Most of the board did, yes. We have an 8-1 conservative
Wow.
board, and most of them agreed. They just needed parent support to stand up, and once we showed up to support them, they stood up. But then they
Oh
got
my
threatened by the
gosh.
state. The governor of North Carolina threatened our school district with abatement because they gave us a mask optional policy,
Now, what is abatement?
where the government comes in and the state government comes in and takes over the property of the school district and runs the school.
Wow. All right.
Yep.
So they threatened. What did the school board do?
The school board stood up to them.
They pushed back.
They pushed back. Then they threatened an injunction, and then they somehow came up with an agreement. But we never went back to mask mandate. At one point, we had 7,000 children in quarantine, because the way that the state had it written, the way that the health director, who's now the health director, who's the lead of the CDC, Mandy Cohen, who was our state health director at the time, now runs the CDC. The way she had it, the policy written, is that mask mandate, it was incentivized. So wearing a mask was incentivized, and not wearing a mask was it was basically extortion. So if you wore a mask and you got COVID, then no one had to quarantine. But if someone not wearing a mask got COVID in the classroom, then everyone had to quarantine. So it was punitive. It was made to make everyone
Everybody could
fall.
see that,
It
right?
was made to make everyone fall in line. Yes. And it was done with children. So the parents making a rational choice had to put their children in the front lines. Yes. And a
Is
lot
she
of parents
still in
didn't.
office?
She works for she's the head of the
She's
CDC now.
she still is. Okay.
Yeah, she was just appointed by Biden.
Oh
Um,
my God.
so yeah, they made us force our children to be on the front lines. And they used those 7,000 people against us that were in quarantine, but our board did not stand down. Finally, our board, along with other elected officials all throughout our county, so we had board representatives there, we had county commissioner representatives there, we had a state senator, state representatives, the health director of our county was there. All came together, and they wrote a resolution and presented it to the state, saying that we wanted all COVID rules and regulations to be ended. And then our school board sent it out to every other school board in the state, every other county school board in the state. So I think there's 100. So they sent it to all other 99 school districts, and asked them to do the same, hoping that we could all put pressure on the state, or at least enough of us. And shortly, they didn't respond right away, but shortly after, all the COVID restrictions were lifted. So I feel like the state knew that we were organizing and coming for them. And so they finally let go. And then it was not long after that everyone across the country was started. So they probably saw the writing on the wall and realized that this was not a fight, that
Right.
they wanted to continue.
Right. It's something they couldn't win. So let's back off.
But
See, folks,
I
this is what this program is all about. Here's someone who is just a typical mom, and she got busy. She got on her feet. She got into the right organization, and I'm going to put some information on somewhere down here about this organization. So if you're curious about how to join, you can look it up. But
it's
yeah, go
great.
ahead.
We have a website, monsterliberty.org. There's a map on there. You can click on your state and then find your county, and it'll take you to a website. Also on Facebook, you can find every single chapter in the country has a Facebook page, so you can find us on Facebook as well. That's usually the best way to get in contact. But yeah, monsterliberty.org. It's
Perfect.
grassroots.
Awesome. Brittany, I really appreciate your time today. This has been an education for us. I hope we can talk again in the future and get to find out what else has happened since this recording.
Yeah.
I think there's a chance of that.
Oh, absolutely. I think moms and dads and grandparents, Moms for Liberty says moms, but we're anyone who's willing to get involved. And there's a lot of us stepping up, and we just get more and more every day. So there's probably a lot that's going to happen. We're only just beginning.
That's awesome. Man, that's good to hear. That's what the country needs. We all
Absolutely.
need to step up, myself included. That's why we're doing this show, to help you get empowered to step up. So thanks again, Brittany. Really
Yes.
appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Anytime.
All right.
You should be a monster. Because everyone says, well, you should be harmless. You don't want to be too aggressive. You don't want to be too assertive. You want to take a back seat. No. You should be a monster. And then you should learn how to control it.
The definition of being aggressive is forceful and sometimes overly assertive pursuit of one's aims. In combat, almost nothing will happen the way you want it to if you don't force it that way. The enemy, nature, time, there's all kinds of things that are going against you. It's a losing battle. And if you don't use force of will, then you're not going to get it done. What it means is you need to make things happen. This is the good thing about being aggressive. Sure, there's certain parts of your nature that are aggressive, but it can also be trained. You can start to think with an aggressive mindset, which is, I am going to take action. I'm going to overcome obstacles. I'm going to push through roadblocks. I'm not going to take no for an answer. And those are things that you can train. There's so often times where people, they get told no or they hit an obstacle and it's game over for them. They're just done. They're done training. They're over it. And your attitude, you have to go, okay, little roadblock, cool. How am I going to get through it? How am I going to get around it?
What I need you to do is evaluate yourself today. Evaluate yourself to see where you are in this race of life. Many of you don't even realize that you've been racing to the finish line. This life is a race. Some of you need to be pushed to start running because you've been walking or you haven't been moving for so long. And you don't even know that you're in a race that all of us are competing to win. But it doesn't matter where you finish. It matters that you run after your goals and your dreams. The way to live is to run after your dreams, to run after your goals, and to run after that finish line. There may be things in your life right now that's holding you back from running, but you have to break through those things. They're there to hinder you, but you can't let it force you to stop running. Chase your dreams, chase your goals. I don't know the situation you're in right now, but the situation that you're in is not your future. It's not who you really are. It's not your full potential. The sky's the limit, but it all starts from within. It's all up to you.
You should be a monster.
You have to be hungry for greatness.